The mistress asked for silence in court, but the pregnant wife showed a photo of her in bed. The fluorescent lights of the Denver County Courthouse hummed with the same relentless persistence that had kept Amelia Voss awake for the past 3 months. She shifted in the wooden chair, her 7-month pregnant belly pressing against the edge of the table, and tried to ignore the way her wedding ring felt like a shackle around her swollen finger. Across the sterile courtroom, Matthew sat with his back straight, his jaw set in that familiar line of stubborn determination she'd once found attractive. Next to him, she sat, Isabel Rhodes, 27 years old, with glossy auburn hair that caught the overhead lights just right, wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than Amelia's monthly grocery budget. Mrs. Voss, her attorney, David Crane, whispered, leaning closer. "Are you ready for this?" Amelia's hand moved instinctively to her belly, where tiny feet kicked against her ribs as if sensing the tension in the room. Ready? She'd been ready since the night she found Matthew's phone buzzing at 2 a.m. with messages from someone named IR. Messages that made her stomach turn and her heart break in ways she didn't know were possible. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and kind but tired eyes, called the session to order. "We're here today for the dissolution of marriage between Amelia Marie Voss and Matthew James Voss. This is a preliminary hearing to address temporary custody, spousal support, and asset division." Matthew's attorney, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit, stood first. "Your Honor, my client wishes to proceed with an amicable separation. Mr. Voss has been nothing but cooperative and wishes to maintain a respectful relationship for the sake of their unborn child." Amelia almost laughed. Respectful. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. Had it been respectful when he came home smelling like another woman's perfume? Had it been respectful when he missed her doctor's appointments because he was working late with his new hire? "Mr. Voss," the judge addressed Matthew directly, "you've filed for shared custody upon the child's birth. Can you explain your reasoning?" Matthew stood, and for a moment Amelia saw a flicker of the man she'd married 8 years ago, the man who used to bring her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, the man who'd cried when they first saw their baby's heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. "Your Honor, I love my wife and our unborn child. This separation is difficult for everyone involved, but I believe I can be an excellent father. I've been present for every prenatal appointment and That's not true." The words slipped out before Amelia could stop them. Every head in the courtroom turned toward her, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. David placed a warning hand on her arm, but she was already speaking. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but he hasn't been present. He missed the last 4 appointments. He missed finding out we're having a daughter." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and she hated herself for it. Matthew's face flushed red. "Amelia, that's not—" "Mr. Voss," the judge interrupted, "please remain seated. Mrs. Voss, you'll have your opportunity to speak." But Matthew was already standing again, his composure cracking. "Your Honor, my wife has been emotional lately. The pregnancy hormones, the stress, she's not thinking clearly about—" "Sit down, Matthew." The voice that cut through the courtroom belonged to Isabel Rhodes. She stood slowly, her chin lifted with an authority that made Amelia's skin crawl. Every person in that room turned to look at her. This woman who had the audacity to speak in a courtroom where she had no legal standing, in a marriage she had helped destroy. "Your Honor," Isabel said, her voice clear and confident, "I understand this is a difficult situation for everyone, but I think it's important that we maintain some level of respect and dignity here. This is about a divorce, not about making moral judgments or personal attacks." The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Amelia stared at Isabel Rhodes, this woman who had shared her husband's bed while she carried his child, who had listened to his complaints about their marriage, while Amelia battled morning sickness alone, who now had the nerve to ask for respect and dignity. Something cold and sharp settled in Amelia's chest. She lowered her head, letting her dark hair fall forward to hide the expression that was spreading across her face. When she finally looked up, her brown eyes held a clarity that made David shift uncomfortably beside her. "You're absolutely right," Amelia said quietly, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom like a blade. "This should be about respect." And for the first time in months, Amelia Voss smiled. "What would you do if the woman who destroyed your marriage had the audacity to demand respect in your divorce hearing? Would you stay silent? Or would you show her what respect really means?" The judge's gavel hadn't even touched the bench when Amelia's phone buzzed against her purse. She glanced down at the screen and saw a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Delacroix. "Honey, I have something you need to see." Come by after court. It's important. Amelia's smile from moments before lingered at the corners of her mouth as she watched Matthew whisper urgently to his attorney. Isabel had resumed her seat, but her earlier confidence seemed to have evaporated like morning mist. Good. Let her feel uncomfortable for once. Your Honor, David stood adjusting his tie. My client would like to present evidence of financial misconduct during the marriage. Mr. Voss has been using marital funds for— Objection, Matthew's lawyer interrupted. Financial records are not relevant to this preliminary hearing. Sustained, the judge replied. Mr. Crane will address financial matters in the next session. Today we're focusing on immediate custody and support arrangements. Amelia felt her daughter kick sharply against her ribs as if the baby could sense her mother's frustration. She placed both hands on her belly and took a deep breath. Patience, she told herself. Everything happens when it's supposed to happen. Matthew stood again, his voice taking on that familiar pleading tone he used when he wanted something. Your Honor, I want to make it clear that I never intended for this situation to become adversarial. Amelia and I, we've been together for 8 years. We built a life together, a business together. She knows I'm a good man who made a mistake. A mistake. Amelia's fingers tightened around her purse strap. 3 months of lies, secret phone calls, and coming home with another woman's lipstick on his collar was a mistake. I've been attending couples counseling, Matthew continued, trying to work through our issues. Dr. Palmer can attest to my commitment to saving our marriage. Amelia's head snapped up. Dr. Palmer? The judge looked at her. Mrs. Voss, please don't interrupt. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I've never been to Dr. Palmer. I don't know who Dr. Palmer is. A flush crept up Matthew's neck. Amelia, you said you weren't ready for counseling. I said I wanted us to go together. You told me you were too busy with the new product launch. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. When exactly were you seeing Dr. Palmer during your Tuesday night client meetings? Or your Thursday team building sessions? Matthew's attorney leaned over and whispered something urgent in his ear. Matthew's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Isabel shifted in her seat, crossing and uncrossing her legs. The navy blazer that had looked so professional 30 minutes ago now seemed to hang on her frame like a costume that didn't quite fit. Your Honor, Amelia's voice cut through the tension. May I ask when these counseling sessions took place? Because I have my husband's calendar, and I'd be very interested to know how he managed to fit therapy around his busy schedule. The judge studied Matthew with the kind of look that had probably made countless defendants squirm. Mr. Voss, can you provide documentation of these counseling sessions? The sessions were consultations, informal consultations. With Dr. Palmer? Well, no, not exactly Dr. Palmer. More like guidance from friends, professional friends who— You lied. Amelia's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the courtroom, under oath, in front of a judge. You lied about going to therapy to save our marriage while you were sleeping with her. She didn't point at Isabel, didn't even look in her direction. She didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew exactly who her was. Isabel's face had gone pale, making her carefully applied makeup look garish under the harsh courtroom lights. She whispered something to Matthew, but he was staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight Amelia could see the muscle twitching. Mr. Voss, the judge's voice was sharp now. Perjury is a serious offense. I suggest you think very carefully before making any more statements about your efforts to preserve this marriage. Matthew's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, my client misspoke. The stress of these proceedings. Your client lied. The judge's words landed like stones in still water. And unless he has documentation to prove otherwise, I'm inclined to believe Mrs. Voss's version of events. Amelia felt something shift inside her chest like a door that had been locked for months finally creaking open. She looked at Matthew, really looked at him, and saw not the confident executive who had charmed her into marriage, but a small, frightened man who had been caught in his own web of lies. For 8 years she had made excuses for him, covered for his broken promises, smiled through his dismissals, believed his explanations even when they made no sense. But sitting in that courtroom, watching him stumble over his own deceptions while his pregnant wife sat 3 feet away, Amelia realized something that made her smile again. She was done making excuses for Matthew Voss, and she was just getting started. The courthouse steps felt steeper than usual as Amelia made her way down, one hand gripping the railing, the other supporting her belly. The October Denver air cut through her coat, but she barely noticed. Her mind was still replaying Matthew's stammering attempts to explain his fictional therapy sessions. David Crane caught up with her at the bottom of the steps, his briefcase swinging at his side. "Amelia, that was brilliant in there. Catching him in that lie about Dr. Palmer, the judge saw right through him." "It wasn't hard," Amelia replied, pulling her car keys from her purse. "Matthew always thinks he's the smartest person in the room. He forgets that other people have memories too." As they walked toward the parking garage, Amelia spotted a familiar figure leaning against a silver BMW. Isabel Rhodes stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. When she saw Amelia approaching, she pushed herself off the car and strode over. "We need to talk," Isabel said, her earlier courtroom composure completely gone. Up close, Amelia could see the foundation caked in the fine lines around her eyes, the way her lipstick had worn off in patches. David stepped protectively closer to Amelia. "Ms. Rhodes, I don't think—" "It's fine," Amelia said quietly. She'd been avoiding this confrontation for months, but maybe it was time. "What do you want to say, Isabel? You're making this so much harder than it needs to be." Isabel's voice was sharp, desperate. "Matthew loves you. He's trying to do the right thing here. And you're being vindictive." Amelia studied the younger woman's face. "The right thing? Is that what you call it when he lies under oath? Or when he spends marital money on hotel rooms while I'm buying maternity clothes at thrift stores? You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Amelia's voice remained calm, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "I understand that you moved to Denver specifically to work at Matthew's company. I understand that you started there 3 days after my 6-month ultrasound appointment. I understand that Matthew suddenly needed to work late every Tuesday and Thursday, which coincidentally are the same days you stay late for inventory management." Isabel's face went white. "How did you—" "Because unlike my husband, I actually pay attention." Amelia shifted her weight, her hand moving to the small of her back. "Did you know that Mrs. Delacroix, my neighbor, works part-time at the Marriott downtown? The same Marriott where Matthew has been signing in as Mr. and Mrs. Johnson every week for the past 3 months. The color drained completely from Isabel's face. David was staring at Amelia with something close to amazement, but she kept her focus on the woman who had helped destroy her marriage. "Mrs. Delacroix recognized Matthew from the company Christmas party photos I showed her last year," Amelia continued. "She's been keeping track. Tuesdays and Thursdays, room 412, always between 6 and 9 p.m. She even saved the parking garage security footage showing your BMW in the adjacent spot." Isabel opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Oh, and Isabel, she took pictures, clear ones, of both of you." At that moment, Matthew appeared from behind a concrete pillar, his face flushed from running. "Isabel, I told you not to." "Amelia." He stopped short when he saw his wife's expression. "What's going on here?" "I was just telling Isabel about Mrs. Delacroix," Amelia said pleasantly. "You remember Mrs. Delacroix, don't you, Matthew? Sweet elderly lady who lives next door? The one who works at the hotel where you've been pretending to be married to your employee?" Matthew's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a sickly gray. "Amelia, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear you explain how Mr. and Mrs. Johnson used your credit card to pay for those rooms. The same credit card that's linked to our joint checking account." She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a screenshot. "I have 3 months of bank statements, Matthew, every Tuesday, every Thursday. $68.50 each time, plus parking." Isabel grabbed Matthew's arm. "You said you paid cash. You promised me you paid cash." I did. I thought—" "You thought what?" Isabel's voice was rising, her professional mask completely shattered. "You thought your pregnant wife wouldn't notice money disappearing from your account. Are you completely stupid?" Several people walking past turned to stare at the scene unfolding in the parking garage. A woman in a business suit slowed her pace, clearly listening. 2 men loading boxes into a van had stopped pretending to work. "Isabel, calm down," Matthew hissed, looking around nervously. "People are watching. Let them watch." Isabel's carefully styled hair was coming loose from its pins. "Do you know what this means for me, for my career? I moved here for you. I left everything for you. And now your wife has hotel records and photographs and—" She whirled on Amelia. "What do you want? Money? Are you going to blackmail us?" Amelia tilted her head, considering. "Blackmail? No, Isabel. I don't want your money." She looked at Matthew, then back at Isabel, then at the small crowd that had gathered to watch their public meltdown. "I want the truth. All of it. In court. Tomorrow." And with that, Amelia walked away, leaving Matthew and Isabel standing in the parking garage, surrounded by strangers who had just witnessed the complete collapse of their carefully constructed lies. Behind her, she could hear Isabel's voice, shrill and desperate. "This is all your fault. You said she would never find out. You said she was too focused on the baby to notice." Amelia smiled as she reached her car. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Mrs. Delacroix's living room smelled like cinnamon tea and old leather, a combination that usually comforted Amelia. Today, however, she sat on the edge of the floral sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring at the manila envelope on the coffee table between them. "Are you sure you want to see these, dear?" Mrs. Delacroix asked, her weathered hands hovering over the envelope. At 73, Colette Delacroix had lived through enough drama to recognize when someone was about to cross a line they couldn't uncross. "I'm sure," Amelia said, though her voice wavered slightly. "I need to know everything." Mrs. Delacroix opened the envelope and spread the contents across the table. Hotel receipts, parking garage timestamps, and photographs. Clear, undeniable photographs of Matthew and Isabel entering and leaving the Marriott together, their body language leaving no room for innocent interpretation. But it was the last photograph that made Amelia's breath catch. Matthew and Isabel at a corner table in the hotel restaurant. Matthew's laptop open between them, both leaning over what appeared to be business documents. "This was taken last Thursday," Mrs. Delacroix said gently. "I was having dinner with my bridge club when I saw them. They were there for over 2 hours working on something." Amelia picked up the photo, studying it closely. She recognized those documents. The blue folder, the distinctive letterhead, the presentation layout. It was the Nexus project, the revolutionary software integration system she had designed in their garage 2 years ago. The project that had turned Matthew's struggling startup into a multi-million-dollar company. The project that was supposed to be her baby, just like the one growing inside her. "Amelia?" Mrs. Delacroix's voice seemed to come from far away. "Honey, what is it?" "She's not just sleeping with my husband," Amelia whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. "She's stealing my work." The next morning, Amelia arrived at Tech Vantage Solutions 30 minutes before anyone else. She still had her access codes. Matthew hadn't thought to revoke them yet. Another oversight that would cost him dearly. The office felt different in the pre-dawn quiet. She remembered when this space was nothing but exposed brick and broken windows, back when she and Matthew had big dreams and a small budget. She had personally painted every wall, installed every light fixture, designed every workflow that had made this company successful. Amelia made her way to Matthew's corner office, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floors she had helped choose. His computer was still logged in. Typical Matthew, brilliant with code but careless with security. She plugged in her flash drive and began copying files. 20 minutes later, she had everything she needed. Email threads between Matthew and Isabel discussing Project Renewal, which was clearly the Nexus system rebranded. Financial projections that showed massive revenue increases from innovative new software solutions. And most damning of all, a presentation deck scheduled for next week's investor meeting, featuring Amelia's original designs with Isabel Rhodes listed as the lead developer. The sound of the elevator made her look up. Through Matthew's glass office walls, she could see Isabel stepping out, coffee in hand, arriving early for what she probably thought was a secret meeting with her lover and business partner. Amelia pocketed her flash drive and walked out to meet her. "Isabel, you're here early." The younger woman nearly dropped her coffee. "Amelia, I didn't... What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question. But then again, I know exactly why you're here." Amelia gestured toward Matthew's office. "The Nexus project presentation is next Tuesday, isn't it? Big investor meeting. Lots of money at stake." Isabel's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." Amelia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just like you don't know that I spent 18 months developing that software architecture. Just like you don't know that my name is on the original patent applications. Just like you don't know that every single line of code in that system was written by me. That's not true." Matthew said what? That it was his idea? That he developed it? Amelia laughed, a sound with no warmth in it. "Isabel, I have the original design documents. I have the development timeline. I have emails between me and our former CTO discussing implementation, all dated 2 years ago, 6 months before you even moved to Denver." Isabel set her coffee down with shaking hands. "You can't prove..." "I can prove everything." Amelia pulled out her phone and showed Isabel a screenshot. "This is an email from you to Matthew, sent yesterday at 11:47 p.m. Quote, Made the final adjustments to the Nexus code. The investors won't know it's the same system. We can present it as completely original work." End quote. The blood drained from Isabel's face so quickly that Amelia thought she might faint. "You hacked my email?" "I didn't have to. You sent it from your work account and I designed the server architecture for this company. I have admin access to everything." Amelia stepped closer. "Did you really think you could steal my life's work and I wouldn't notice? Did you think that sleeping with my husband somehow gave you the right to everything I built?" At that moment, the elevator dinged again, and Matthew stepped out, whistling cheerfully until he saw the two women facing each other in the middle of the office. "What's going on here?" he asked, but his voice already carried the edge of someone who suspected he was about to receive very bad news. "I was just telling Isabel about intellectual property law," Amelia said pleasantly. "Did you know that attempting to present someone else's patented work as your own original creation is not just theft, but fraud? The kind of fraud that can shut down a company and send people to prison?" Matthew's whistle died in his throat. "Oh, and Matthew, I've already called our investors. The meeting is canceled, indefinitely." For the first time since this nightmare began, Amelia felt truly powerful. She was no longer the betrayed wife begging for scraps of attention. She was the woman who had built this empire, and she was taking it back, one devastating revelation at a time. The conference room at Tech Vantage Solutions had never felt smaller. Amelia sat at the head of the polished table she had personally selected 3 years ago, watching as Matthew paced behind his chair like a caged animal. Isabel remained frozen in her seat, her earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Sit down, Matthew," Amelia said quietly. "We need to talk." "Talk? Talk?" Matthew's voice cracked with desperation. "Amelia, you can't just cancel the investor meeting. Do you have any idea what you've done? Morrison Industries was going to fund our expansion. We're talking about $15 million. "Our expansion?" Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice of words, considering you were about to present my intellectual property as your joint creation with your employee." Isabel flinched at the word employee, but remained silent. Smart girl. She was finally learning when to keep her mouth shut. I wasn't trying to steal anything from you," Matthew stammered. "The Nexus project, it was a collaboration. We worked on it together." "Matthew," Amelia's voice cut through his protests like a scalpel. "I have the original design documents. I have the patent applications with my name as the sole inventor. I have time-stamped code repositories showing that I wrote every single function, every algorithm, every interface." She paused, letting that sink in. "What exactly did you contribute besides the company credit card number?" Matthew's face cycled through several emotions before settling on anger. "I built this company. I took the risks. I found the investors. You just coded." "I just coded." Amelia repeated the words slowly, as if tasting something bitter. "Is that what you told Isabel, that I just coded while you did the real work?" She turned to look at Isabel directly for the first time since they'd sat down. "Tell me, Isabel, what did Matthew promise you? A partnership? Your name on the patents? A share of the profits when the company goes public?" Isabel's eyes darted between Matthew and Amelia, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. He said, he told me you weren't involved in the technical side anymore, that you'd stepped back because of the pregnancy. And you believed him? He showed me files, code with his name on it. He said what he needed to say to get you into bed and steal my work," Amelia interrupted. "Did you ever wonder why a successful executive would suddenly need a junior developer to help with updates to existing software? Did you ever ask yourself why these private meetings always happened at hotels instead of the office?" Matthew slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Amelia, you're being vindictive. This is about our marriage, not the company. Don't punish the business because you're angry at me." "Punish the business?" Amelia stood slowly, her hands pressed flat against the table. "Matthew, I am the business. I designed the software that generates 90% of our revenue. I created the algorithms that our clients depend on. I wrote the code that made you rich enough to afford hotel rooms for your affair." She walked to the whiteboard and began drawing a flowchart with swift, confident strokes. "This is the Tech Vantage system architecture. Every connection, every data flow, every security protocol." She turned back to them. "Recreate this without me. Go ahead. I'll wait." Matthew stared at the complex diagram, his mouth opening and closing silently. Isabel looked like she was about to be sick. "Here's what's going to happen," Amelia continued, her voice calm and businesslike. I'm taking back my intellectual property. All of it. The Nexus project, the integration protocols, the client management systems, everything I created belongs to me. You can't do that. Matthew's voice was shrill now. We have contracts, clients, obligations. We had contracts. We had clients. We had obligations. Amelia returned to her seat, moving with the deliberate grace of someone who held all the cards. But unfortunately, those contracts were based on software owned by someone who no longer works for this company. You're quitting? Isabel spoke for the first time in minutes, her voice barely above a whisper. Quitting? No, Isabel. I'm not quitting. Amelia smiled, and for the first time in months it was genuine. I'm starting over, my own company, with my own software. And my first order of business will be offering our clients, my former clients, a better deal than they're getting here. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Matthew sank into his chair, the full implications of what she was saying finally hitting him. Amelia, please, we can work this out. The divorce, the company, everything. I made mistakes, I know that, but we can work it out? Amelia gathered her purse and stood. Matthew, you didn't just cheat on me. You tried to erase me. You tried to take credit for my life's work while I was carrying your child. You brought your mistress into the company I helped build and convinced her to help you steal from me. She looked at Isabel, whose mascara was starting to run despite her best efforts not to cry. And you, Isabel, you didn't just sleep with a married man. You tried to profit from it. You thought you could step into my life, take my husband, take my work, and no one would be smart enough to notice. Amelia walked toward the door, then paused. By the way, I called Morrison Industries this morning. I told them about the ownership dispute over the Nexus project. They were very concerned about potential legal complications. They've decided to postpone their investment indefinitely. Matthew's face went gray. You destroyed us. No, Matthew. You destroyed you. I just refused to let you destroy me in the process. As Amelia left the conference room, she could hear Isabel's voice behind her, sharp and accusing. You said she was just a housewife. You said she didn't understand business. You said... The elevator doors closed, cutting off the sound of their recriminations. Amelia pressed the button for the lobby and watched the numbers count down, carrying her away from the life she had built with a man who had never truly seen her value. When the doors opened again, she stepped out into a world full of possibilities. 3 days after Amelia walked out of TechVantage Solutions, the first domino fell. She was sitting in her new office, a modest space above a coffee shop on Larimer Street, but it was hers, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Kieran Morrison from Morrison Industries. We need to talk. Can you meet me at 2 p.m. today? Amelia smiled as she typed back, Of course. I'll bring the real Nexus documentation. 2 hours later, she sat across from Kieran Morrison in a sleek conference room downtown. The 60-something venture capitalist had the kind of steel-gray eyes that had seen through countless business pitches, but today they held something that looked almost like admiration. Mrs. Voss, he said, sliding a folder across the table, I've spent the last 48 hours having my tech team verify your claims about the Nexus project. Everything checks out. The code signatures, the development timeline, the patent applications, it's all yours. I told you it was. Yes, you did. What you didn't tell me is that your husband has been shopping this same technology to 3 other investment firms, claiming he developed it himself. Amelia's eyebrows rose. He did what? Morrison opened the folder, revealing printed emails and presentation decks. Berkshire Tech Ventures, Pinnacle Capital, and Redstone Industries. All received pitches from Matthew Voss in the last month, all featuring your software architecture, all claiming he was the sole inventor. That's fraud. Securities fraud. Yes, it is. Morrison leaned back in his chair. It's also incredibly stupid. Do you know what happens when multiple investment firms discover they're being pitched the same exclusive opportunity by someone who doesn't actually own the technology? Amelia shook her head, though she was beginning to get an idea. They talk to each other, and then they call lawyers. By evening, the news had spread through Denver's tight-knit tech community like wildfire. Amelia learned this when her phone began ringing with calls from former colleagues, clients, and even competitors, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. The call that surprised her most came at 8 p.m., just as she was settling into bed with a cup of herbal tea and her laptop. Amelia, this is Bryce Caldwell from TechVantage. I hope it's okay that I'm calling you directly. Bryce was Matthew's former business partner, the one who had sold his shares and left the company 2 years ago after what he'd called philosophical differences with Matthew's leadership style. "It's fine, Bryce. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to apologize," he said, and his voice carried a weight that made Amelia sit up straighter. "I should have said something when I left TechVantage. I should have told you what I suspected." "What you suspected about what?" "About Matthew taking credit for your work. About him rewriting history to make himself look like the technical genius. I saw it happening, and I was a coward. I took my buyout and ran instead of standing up for you." Amelia felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "You couldn't have known." "I did know. That's the thing, Amelia. I knew Matthew couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. I knew you were the one who built everything that made the company valuable, and I knew that one day he'd try to push you out and take all the credit." There was a long pause. Then Bryce continued, "I also know that he's been calling me all day, begging me to come back and help him rebuild the technical infrastructure. Apparently several clients are threatening to terminate their contracts, unless he can guarantee continued support for systems he can't actually maintain." Amelia almost laughed. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I was too busy," which is true. "I'm too busy helping you launch your new company." This time Amelia did laugh, a sound of pure delight. "Bryce Caldwell, are you offering to be my business partner? Only if you'll have me. I brought the money, you brought the brains, maybe this time we can do it right." After she hung up with Bryce, Amelia felt lighter than she had in months. She was just about to call it a night when her phone buzzed with another text, this one from David Crane. "Emergency hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. Matthew is trying to freeze your assets, claiming you stole company property. Can you be there?" Amelia stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I'll be there. And David? Bring the folder Mrs. Delacroix gave me. All of it." The next morning, the Denver County Courthouse felt different. Instead of the nervous pregnant woman who had walked these halls a week ago, Amelia strode through the corridors with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to hide. Matthew was already seated when she entered the courtroom, but he looked nothing like the composed executive from their first hearing. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate phone calls. Isabel was nowhere to be seen. "Where's your girlfriend?" Amelia asked as she took her seat. Matthew's face flushed red. She had to return to her family in Phoenix. "Emergency." "Emergency," Amelia repeated. Or did she finally realize that sleeping with you wasn't worth destroying her career over? Before Matthew could respond, the judge entered and the hearing began. Matthew's attorney, looking distinctly uncomfortable, stood to present their case for asset freezing and injunctive relief. But as the lawyer spoke, Amelia noticed something interesting. Every few minutes, Matthew would pull out his phone and check it frantically, his face growing more desperate each time. David leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Morrison Industries filed a formal complaint with the SEC this morning. Fraud investigation. It's going to be in the tech blogs by noon." Amelia nodded, but kept her expression neutral. She didn't need to gloat. The truth was doing all the work for her. When Matthew's attorney finished his presentation, the judge turned to David. "Mr. Crane, your response." David stood, holding Mrs. Delacroix's folder. "Your Honor, before we address Mr. Voss's claims, we'd like to present evidence of his ongoing pattern of fraudulent misrepresentation, both in this courtroom and in his business dealings." As David began laying out the hotel receipts, the email threads, and the investor fraud documentation, Amelia watched Matthew's face crumble piece by piece. This was justice. Not the screaming, dramatic confrontation she'd once imagined, but something better. The simple, devastating power of truth finally coming to light. And it was only the beginning. The courthouse hallway buzzed with activity after the hearing, but Amelia barely noticed. She stood near the tall windows, one hand resting on her 8-month belly, watching Matthew argue frantically with his attorney near the elevators. His voice carried across the marble floors, desperate and shrill. "You don't understand. She's trying to destroy me. Everything I built, everything I worked for, everything you stole," his attorney, Gerald Hoffman, interrupted sharply. "Matthew, I've reviewed the evidence. The patent documents, the code repositories, the investor communications. You committed securities fraud. Multiple counts. I can't defend this." Amelia watched as Matthew's face went pale. "You can't just abandon me. I'm paying you." "With what money?" Hoffman snapped back. "Your company's bank accounts are frozen pending the SEC investigation. Your personal accounts are tied up in divorce proceedings. And frankly, Mr. Voss, I don't represent criminals." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Hoffman gathered his briefcase and walked away, leaving Matthew standing alone by the elevators, looking smaller and more pathetic than Amelia had ever seen him. David Crane appeared at her elbow. Well, that was satisfying to watch. I almost feel sorry for him, Amelia said, though her voice held no real sympathy. Don't. He made his choices. David gestured toward Matthew, who was now frantically dialing numbers on his phone. Speaking of choices, I have some interesting news about Ms. Rhodes. Amelia raised an eyebrow. She didn't just run home to Phoenix because of a family emergency. She was fired yesterday, terminated for cause, specifically for participating in intellectual property theft and having an inappropriate relationship with a superior. Who fired her? Your old friend Bryce Caldwell. Apparently, when he agreed to help you, he also bought out Matthew's remaining shares in TechVantage for pennies on the dollar. He's the new majority owner as of this morning. Amelia blinked. He didn't tell me that. He wanted to surprise you. The first thing he did as owner was terminate Isabel Rhodes and issue a public statement clarifying that all proprietary technology developed by the company was the work of Amelia Voss, and that the company had been operating under fraudulent pretenses for the past several months. Across the hallway, Matthew's phone conversation was becoming more animated. Even from a distance, Amelia could hear fragments. You don't understand. She's lying. Please, just listen. Who's he calling? She asked. David checked his own phone. Based on the news alerts I'm getting, probably everyone he can think of. The story broke an hour ago. Tech executive accused of fraud. Wife reveals years of stolen work. It's trending on LinkedIn. Amelia pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 86 LinkedIn notifications. The top message was from a journalist at TechCrunch. Mrs. Voss, we'd love to interview you about your experience. This story is resonating with women in tech across the country. I'm not ready for interviews, she said, but even as she spoke, she felt a flutter of something that might have been pride. Her story was resonating. Other women who had been silenced, overlooked, or erased were seeing themselves in her fight. Matthew's voice suddenly rose to a near shout. Isabel, please, you can't just disappear. We can fix this. We can... The line apparently went dead, because he stared at his phone for a long moment before hurling it against the marble wall. The crash echoed through the hallway, drawing stares from lawyers, clerks, and other courthouse visitors. Matthew stood frozen, looking at the shattered remains of his phone, his shoulders shaking with either rage or despair. Mr. Voss, a woman's voice called out from across the hallway. A reporter with a camera crew was approaching, microphone extended. Mr. Voss, can you comment on the SEC investigation? What's your response to the allegations of fraud? Matthew looked up like a deer caught in headlights. No comment, no. I have nothing to say. Is it true that you stole software code from your pregnant wife? How do you respond to claims that... I said no comment. Matthew pushed past the reporter, but more journalists were emerging from the elevators. The story had legs, and they smelled blood in the water. Amelia watched as Matthew tried to flee through the crowd of reporters, their questions echoing off the courthouse walls. Mr. Voss, where is Isabel Rhodes? Is it true your company is facing bankruptcy? What do you say to the investors you allegedly defrauded? How does it feel to have your wife expose your lies in court? Matthew made it to the stairwell before disappearing from view, the reporters in pursuit like a pack of wolves. Karma, David said quietly, is a beautiful thing. But Amelia wasn't watching the media circus anymore. Her attention had been caught by a familiar figure stepping off the elevator, Mrs. Delacroix, dressed in her best navy blue dress and carrying a small purse. Mrs. Delacroix, what are you doing here? The elderly woman smiled. I wanted to see justice being done, dear, and I brought you something. She opened her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. More photos. From this morning. Amelia opened the envelope and found herself looking at pictures of the Marriott Hotel parking garage, time-stamped at 6:47 a.m. There was Isabel's silver BMW, packed full of suitcases and boxes, and there was Isabel herself, loading the last of her belongings while talking frantically on her phone. She came back to get her things from the hotel room, Mrs. Delacroix explained. Room 412. She'd been living there for the past month, did you know that? My friend Dolores works the front desk. She said the girl had been staying there full-time, like it was her apartment. Amelia studied the photos more carefully. In one image, Isabel was clearly crying, mascara streaking down her face as she threw boxes into her car. In another, she was screaming at someone on the phone, her face twisted with rage. She looked desperate, Mrs. Delacroix continued. Dolores said she couldn't pay her bill. The credit card, Mr. Matthews' credit card, was declined. Hotel security had to escort her out. She was living at the hotel on Matthews' credit card? For weeks, apparently. Dolores said she'd been telling people she was moving to Denver permanently for a big business opportunity. Said she was going to be a partner in a major tech company. Amelia felt a laugh bubble up from somewhere deep in her chest. Isabel hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been living a complete fantasy, believing Matthew's promises about their future together. And now reality had come crashing down around both of them. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Phoenix area code. "This is all your fault. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." Amelia showed the message to David, who snorted. "Block the number. She's about to learn that Arizona has very strict laws about harassment and cyberstalking." But Amelia didn't block the number. Instead, she typed back, "I didn't destroy anything, Isabel. I just refused to let you steal it. There's a difference." The response came immediately. "You're vindictive and cruel. Matthew loved you and you threw it all away for revenge." This time Amelia did laugh out loud. She typed, "Matthew loved my bank account, my coding skills, and my willingness to stay quiet while he took credit for my work. He never loved me, and neither did you. You loved what you thought he could give you." There was no response to that message. Mrs. Delacroix patted Amelia's arm gently. "Come on, dear, let's get you home. You've had enough excitement for one day." As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Amelia felt her daughter kick strongly against her ribs, a reminder that through all of this chaos and betrayal, something beautiful was growing, something that belonged entirely to her. Outside, the Denver sun was shining, and for the first time in months, Amelia felt like she could finally see the light. 2 weeks later, Amelia sat in her doctor's office, staring at the ultrasound screen where her daughter's perfect profile was clearly visible. Dr. Hawthorne smiled as she adjusted the equipment, capturing images of tiny fingers and toes. "She's developing beautifully," the doctor said. "Strong heartbeat, good size. How are you feeling emotionally? I know the divorce proceedings have been intense. Actually, I'm feeling better than I have in months," Amelia replied, and was surprised to realize it was true. Despite the chaos of the past weeks, despite the sleepless nights and legal battles, she felt lighter somehow, clearer. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bryce. "Emergency meeting. Need you at the office in an hour. Bring David if you can." An hour later, Amelia sat in the conference room of her new company, Voscode Solutions, watching Bryce pace in front of a wall covered with printed emails and financial documents. David sat beside her, reading through a thick legal folder with a grim expression. "It's worse than we thought," Bryce said without preamble. "Matthew hasn't just been defrauding investors. He's been embezzling from TechVantage for over a year." Amelia felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" David looked up from the folder. "Shell companies, fake consulting contracts, phantom employees on the payroll." He pulled out a spreadsheet covered in highlighted numbers. "Matthew's been siphoning money from the company's operating account and funneling it into personal accounts. We're talking about nearly $300,000. 300? Amelia couldn't finish the sentence. "That's not the worst part," Bryce continued. "He's been using company funds to pay for everything. The hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry for Isabel, even her apartment deposit in Phoenix when she first moved there. You're telling me he funded his entire affair with stolen money? Worse, he's been doing it while the company struggled to make payroll. Remember when you had to defer your salary last year because of cash flow issues? There were no cash flow issues. Matthew was stealing the money." Amelia felt a rage so pure and cold it took her breath away. She'd worked without pay, believing they were all sacrificing for the company's future, while Matthew was stealing from their employees to wine and dine his mistress. "There's more," David said quietly. "The FBI's involved now. Financial Crimes Division. They want to interview you." "Me? Why?" "Because technically, as Matthew's wife, you had access to the company accounts. They need to verify that you weren't involved in the embezzlement." Amelia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So now I have to prove I'm not a criminal because my husband stole money to cheat on me." "It's just a formality," David assured her. "Your employment records show you haven't drawn a salary in 8 months. Your personal bank account shows no unusual deposits. You're clearly a victim here, not a perpetrator." Bryce sat down across from her. "Amelia, there's something else. Something you need to know about Isabel." "What now?" "She's been arrested." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "Arrested for what?" "She tried to sell your source code to a competitor, Zenith Technologies. She approached them last week, claiming she had developed a revolutionary software system and was looking for a buyer. Bryce pulled out a printed email chain. What she didn't know is that Zenith's CTO is an old friend of mine. He called me immediately. Amelia stared at the emails, recognizing fragments of her own code in Isabel's proposal. She was asking for $500,000, Bryce continued. She told them she was the lead developer on a project worth millions, and that she was willing to bring the technology to a new company for the right price. But she doesn't own any of it. She can't sell what isn't hers. Exactly. Which is why she's been charged with attempted theft of intellectual property, computer fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The FBI picked her up at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Apparently she was trying to fly to Silicon Valley for a meeting with another potential buyer. David shook his head. She really thought she could sell your work and disappear with the money. Where is she now? Maricopa County Jail. Her bail hearing is tomorrow, but given the federal charges and flight risk, she'll probably be held until trial. Amelia's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Matthew's name. She'd blocked his personal number, but this was coming from a different phone. Should I answer it? She asked. Put it on speaker, David advised, but don't say anything that could be used against you later. She answered the call and immediately heard Matthew's voice, slurred and desperate. Amelia, please don't hang up. I know you hate me, but I need to tell you something. Matthew, are you drunk? Maybe. Probably. Does it matter? His laugh was bitter. Everything's gone, Amelia. Everything. The company, the money, the FBI. They took my computers, my files, everything. And Isabel. His voice cracked. She tried to sell your code, your work. She was going to take the money and disappear. I know, Matthew. I know all of it. Do you know that I loved you? The words came out raw and broken. Do you know that I never meant for it to get this far? It was supposed to be just a distraction. Just something to make me feel young again. But she made me believe we could have more, that we could build something together. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger for the woman she used to be, the woman who would have comforted him, who would have made excuses for him even now. Matthew, you didn't love me. You loved having someone to clean up your mistakes and make you feel smart. You loved having someone to steal from without consequence. That's not true. You embezzled $300,000, Matthew. You stole from our employees while I worked for free. You funded your affair with money that belonged to people who trusted us. The line was quiet for so long that Amelia thought he'd hung up. Then she heard him crying. Ugly, broken sobs that made her feel nothing but exhaustion. I'm sorry, he whispered finally. I'm so sorry, Amelia. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us. No, Matthew. You destroyed yourself. I'm building something new. She hung up and looked at Bryce and David, both of whom were staring at her with expressions of respect and something that might have been awe. You know what the strangest part is? She said finally. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. Her daughter chose that moment to kick strongly against her ribs as if reminding her mother that some things were worth fighting for, and some things were just worth walking away from. Outside the conference room windows, the Denver skyline stretched toward the mountains, and Amelia realized that for the first time in years, the future looked exactly as bright as she chose to make it. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for a gray November morning, exactly 1 week before Amelia's due date. She sat in the courthouse parking lot for a few minutes before going in, her hands resting on her belly, where her daughter seemed to be practicing for her grand entrance into the world. We're going to finish this today, little one, she whispered, and then it's just you and me. The courthouse corridors were quieter than usual, but as Amelia approached the family court wing, she noticed an unusual crowd gathered near the entrance. Reporters, camera crews, and what looked like federal agents in dark suits. David Crane intercepted her before she reached the courtroom doors. Amelia, there's been a development. Matthew's been arrested. Arrested? When? This morning. The FBI picked him up at his apartment on federal embezzlement charges. Apparently, they found evidence of additional financial crimes: tax evasion, wire fraud, money laundering through offshore accounts. David's expression was grim. He's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Amelia felt the news hit her like a physical blow, not because she felt sorry for Matthew, but because of the sheer scope of his deception. How much money are we talking about? Over $2 million. Spread across 3 years. He wasn't just stealing from TechVantage. He was stealing from the IRS, from investors, from everyone. They entered the courtroom to find it fuller than usual. Judge Martinez, who had presided over their earlier hearings, looked tired as she reviewed the thick file before her. Matthew's chair sat empty, but his court-appointed attorney was present, looking like a man who wished he were anywhere else. "Your Honor," the attorney began, "given the federal criminal charges filed this morning against Mr. Voss, we would like to request a continuance." "Denied," Judge Martinez said firmly. "Mr. Voss's criminal activities do not alter the necessity of resolving the dissolution of this marriage. Mrs. Voss deserves closure, especially given her condition." She looked at Amelia with something that might have been sympathy. "Are you prepared to proceed without Mr. Voss present?" "Yes, Your Honor." What followed was unlike any divorce hearing Amelia had ever imagined. Instead of arguments about asset division, David presented evidence of Matthew's crimes. Instead of custody battles, they discussed the federal seizure of Matthew's assets and the restitution he would owe to his victims. "Mrs. Voss," the judge said finally, "given the evidence of extensive financial fraud committed by your husband, this court finds that you are entitled to full divorce decree with no waiting period, full custody of your child, and protection from any financial liability for Mr. Voss's criminal activities." As the gavel came down, Amelia felt a profound sense of completion, but the real drama was waiting for her outside the courtroom. Standing by the elevators flanked by 2 federal marshals was Matthew. He was in handcuffs, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his face gaunt and unshaven. When he saw Amelia emerge from the courtroom, he tried to step toward her, but the marshals held him back. "Amelia," he called out, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "Amelia, please, just let me explain." She stopped walking and turned to face him. This man she had loved for 8 years, who had given her the greatest gift of her life and simultaneously destroyed everything they had built together. "Explain what, Matthew? I never meant for it to go this far. The money, the lies, Isabel, none of it was supposed to matter. You were supposed to be focused on the baby, and I was supposed to have everything back under control before you noticed." The pure arrogance of his statement took her breath away. "Before I noticed? You were pregnant. You were supposed to be thinking about nurseries and baby names, not auditing our finances and investigating my personal life." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You thought pregnancy made me stupid?" "No, I thought it made you distracted, content. I thought you'd be happy to let me handle the business side while you prepared for motherhood. So you stole over $1 million, committed securities fraud, and had an affair because you thought I was too pregnant to notice?" Matthew's face crumpled. "I was trying to make us rich, Amelia. The offshore accounts, the creative accounting, it was all going to pay off. We were going to have everything. We already had everything, Matthew. We had a successful business, a beautiful home, a baby on the way. You threw it all away because it wasn't enough for you. Because I wanted more for us, for our daughter. I wanted to give her the kind of life where she never had to worry about money, never had to have a father in prison." Amelia's voice cut through his excuses like a blade. "Never had to explain to her friends why Daddy is a convicted felon? Never had to wonder if her last name makes people think she's a criminal too?" Matthew opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. At that moment, Amelia's phone buzzed with a call from a Phoenix area code. Without thinking, she answered it, putting it on speaker. "Amelia?" Isabel's voice was thin and desperate. "Amelia, is that you? What do you want, Isabel? I need you to know that this wasn't my idea. The money, the code theft, none of it. Matthew convinced me that you weren't involved in the company anymore, that everything belonged to him. I never would have—" "Stop." Amelia's voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop lying. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime. I'm not lying. I'm in jail, Amelia. I'm facing federal charges. My career is over. My family won't speak to me. And I'm probably going to prison. Why would I lie now?" Amelia looked at Matthew, who had gone pale at the sound of Isabel's voice. "You want to know why you'd lie, Isabel? Because that's who you are. You're someone who sees a successful woman and decides you deserve her life more than she does. You're someone who sleeps with a married man and then acts surprised when it doesn't lead to a fairy tale ending. That's not. You moved to Denver to steal my husband and my work. You lived in a hotel room paid for with embezzled money and convinced yourself you were building a future. You tried to sell my intellectual property for $500,000 and flee the country. And now you want me to feel sorry for you because there were consequences?" The line was silent for a long moment. "I lost everything too," Isabel whispered finally. "No," Amelia said, looking directly at Matthew as she spoke. "You never had anything to lose. You just had delusions." She hung up the phone and turned back to Matthew, who was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Is there anything else you want to say to me?" she asked. "Because this is probably the last chance you'll get for about 15 years. Matthew looked at her for a long moment, and for just an instant, she saw a flicker of the man she had married. Then it was gone. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved." "So am I, Matthew. So am I." As the federal marshals led him toward the elevators, Amelia felt her daughter kick strongly against her ribs. She placed both hands on her belly and smiled. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she whispered. "We're going to be just fine." And for the first time in months, she truly believed it. 6 months later, Amelia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office on the 20th floor of a downtown Denver high-rise, her 3-month-old daughter, Sophia, sleeping peacefully in a carrier strapped to her chest. The view stretched across the city to the Rocky Mountains beyond, and she could see the construction cranes working on what would become the new headquarters of Voscode Solutions. "The Forbes interview went live this morning," Bryce said, looking up from his laptop. "The headline is, 'From Betrayal to Billions: How One Woman Built an Empire from the Ashes of Deception.'" Amelia smiled, bouncing gently to keep Sophia calm. "Billions might be a slight exaggeration. Give it time. We've got contracts with 12 Fortune 500 companies. Our software is being used by over 200 startups, and that partnership with Morrison Industries is about to make us the premier cybersecurity firm in the Mountain West." Bryce grinned. "I'd say billions is conservative." The door to her office opened, and David Crane entered carrying a thick legal folder and wearing an expression that meant good news. "Matthew's sentencing hearing was this morning," he announced without preamble. 18 years federal prison, plus restitution of $2.3 million to his victims. The judge called his crimes a profound betrayal of trust that destroyed lives and businesses. Amelia felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction, no sadness, just a quiet acknowledgement that justice had been served. What about Isabel? 5 years, plus she has to pay back the money she attempted to steal. Her tech career is over. No company will hire her with a federal fraud conviction. David sat down and opened the folder. "But that's not why I'm here. I have news about the civil suits." Over the past months, the victims of Matthew's crimes had filed a series of civil lawsuits. Former employees seeking back pay, investors demanding damages, clients who had trusted a company built on lies. As Matthew's former wife, Amelia could have been included in those suits, but instead, she had become something unexpected, an ally to Matthew's victims and a voice for financial justice. "The class action settlement was approved," David continued. "Voscode Solutions Victim Compensation Fund will distribute $3.2 million to everyone who lost money because of Matthew's fraud. The judge specifically commended your decision to use your company's profits to help repair the damage your ex-husband caused." Amelia looked down at Sophia, who had opened her dark eyes and was staring up at her mother with the kind of complete trust that Matthew had never deserved. "It was the right thing to do," she said simply. "Those people trusted us. They trusted the company I helped build. When that trust was betrayed, it became my responsibility to restore it." Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Delacroix. "Saw you on the morning news, dear. So proud." Sophia looked beautiful. P.S. New neighbors moved into Matthew's old apartment. Much quieter. Amelia laughed softly. Matthew's luxury penthouse had been seized by the FBI and sold at auction. The proceeds had gone toward restitution, but it still wasn't enough to cover what he'd stolen. He would spend the next 2 decades in federal prison, and even after he was released, he would owe millions in court-ordered payments to his victims. "There's one more thing," David said, pulling out a single sheet of paper. "This came through yesterday. Isabel Rhodes filed an appeal of her sentence." "On what grounds?" "She claims she was manipulated and coerced by Matthew, that she didn't understand the full scope of his criminal activities." David shook his head. The appeals court rejected it. Her attorney argued that she was a victim of psychological manipulation, but the prosecution presented evidence that she actively participated in planning the intellectual property theft and initiated contact with multiple buyers for your code. So she's finally learning that actions have consequences. More than that, the federal prosecutor used her case as an example in a congressional hearing about white-collar crime. She's literally become a case study in how greed and poor judgment can destroy a promising career. Through the windows, Amelia could see the building that used to house Tech Vantage Solutions. It was empty now, with a for lease sign in the lobby. The company had been liquidated to pay creditors, its remaining assets distributed among Matthew's victims. But from those ashes, Something better had emerged. Voss Code Solutions employed 47 people, including 6 former TechVantage employees who had lost their jobs when Matthew's crimes came to light. The company's core mission was simple: ethical technology development with complete transparency in business practices. Every employee had access to the company's financial records. Every contract included provisions for ethical conduct. Every line of code was documented and attributed to its actual author. "Mrs. Voss?" Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "There's a call for you from TechCrunch. They want to discuss your keynote speech at the Women in Technology Summit next month." Amelia had become an unexpected voice in the tech industry, speaking about intellectual property rights, the invisibility of women's contributions to technology development, and the importance of ethical business practices. Her story had resonated with thousands of women who had seen their own work minimized, stolen, or attributed to male colleagues. "Tell them I'll call back in an hour," she replied. "I'm about to feed Sophia." As she settled into the comfortable nursing chair in the corner of her office, Amelia reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a pregnant woman sitting in a courthouse, watching her marriage dissolve while her husband's mistress demanded respect. Now she was the CEO of a thriving company, a mother to a beautiful daughter, and a voice for justice in her industry. Her phone buzzed with one last message, this one from an unknown number with a Colorado area code. "I read about your company in the newspaper. I wanted you to know that Matthew tried to contact me from prison last week. He wanted me to invest in some business opportunity he's planning for when he gets out. I told him I don't do business with criminals. Thought you should know he hasn't learned anything. K. Morrison." Amelia smiled as she typed back, "Thank you for letting me know. And thank you for believing in me when no one else would." The response came quickly. "I didn't just believe in you, Amelia. I recognized talent when I saw it. That's what good investors do." As the sun set over the Denver skyline, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Amelia held her daughter close and thought about the future. Sophia would grow up in a world where her mother's name was synonymous with innovation, integrity, and strength. She would never have to wonder if her accomplishments were really her own, or if someone more powerful was waiting to take credit for her work. Matthew and Isabel had tried to steal Amelia's life, her work, and her future. Instead, they had given her something far more valuable: the knowledge that she was strong enough to rebuild from nothing, smart enough to outmaneuver those who underestimated her, and brave enough to demand the respect she had always deserved. From the ashes of their betrayal, she had built something beautiful, something lasting, something that was entirely, undeniably hers. And it was just the beginning. 2 years later, the auditorium at the Denver Convention Center was packed with over 3,000 women in technology, their faces illuminated by the glow of laptops and tablets as they took notes. Amelia stood at the podium, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system as she reached the conclusion of her keynote speech. "They thought silence was submission," she said, her eyes scanning the audience. "They thought pregnancy made me weak. They thought my kindness meant I was naive. They were wrong about everything except one thing. I was building something. I was always building something." The applause that erupted was thunderous, lasting nearly 5 minutes as women throughout the auditorium rose to their feet. In the front row, Mrs. Delacroix dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, beaming with pride. Beside her, Bryce held 2-year-old Sophia on his lap, the little girl clapping her tiny hands in imitation of the crowd around her. As the applause finally died down, Amelia smiled and delivered her closing words. "To every woman who has been told her ideas aren't original enough, her voice isn't loud enough, her presence isn't valuable enough, remember this: you don't need their permission to succeed. You don't need their approval to innovate. You don't need their validation to change the world. You just need to refuse to be erased." Later at the reception, Amelia moved through the crowd of admirers and fellow entrepreneurs. Sophia perched happily on her hip. Voss Code Solutions had grown into a billion-dollar enterprise with offices in 12 cities and partnerships spanning the globe. But more importantly, it had become a model for ethical business practices and a launching pad for dozens of women-led startups. "Mommy, why are all these people taking pictures?" Sophia asked, her dark eyes wide with curiosity. "Because Mommy's story helped other people find their brave," Amelia replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. A young woman approached them, her hands shaking slightly as she introduced herself. "Ms. Voss, I'm Kendra Walsh from Seattle. I wanted to thank you. My ex-husband tried to steal credit for my app design in our divorce proceedings. When I heard your story, I found the courage to fight back. My company just got funded for $2 million. Amelia smiled warmly. What's your company called? Phoenix Rising Technologies. Because sometimes you have to burn down the lies to find the truth underneath. As the evening wound down, Amelia found herself on the convention center's outdoor terrace, looking out over the Denver skyline. The city sparkled beneath a canopy of stars, and in the distance she could see the illuminated sign of the Voss Code Solutions headquarters building. Her phone buzzed with a message from David Crane. Thought you'd want to know. Matthew's parole was denied today. Disciplinary issues in prison. He won't be eligible again for another 3 years. Amelia read the message and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just the quiet knowledge that some people never learn from their mistakes. She deleted the message without responding. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number with a Phoenix area code. Saw your speech online. You won. I hope you're happy. This time Amelia did respond. I didn't win, Isabel. I survived. There's a difference. The reply came quickly. I made a mistake. I was young and stupid and… Amelia blocked the number without reading the rest. Some conversations weren't worth having twice. There you are. Bryce's voice interrupted her thoughts as he joined her on the terrace carrying a sleepy Sophia. Ready to head home? More than ready. As they walked toward the parking garage, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 2 years ago, she had sat in a courthouse bathroom, pregnant and humiliated, wondering how her life had fallen apart so completely. Tonight, she was one of the most respected voices in American technology, the CEO of a company that employed over 400 people, and the mother of a little girl who would grow up knowing that her voice mattered. The betrayal that was meant to destroy her had instead revealed her true strength. The lies that were meant to erase her had instead made her unforgettable. The silence that was meant to diminish her had instead amplified her voice until it reached women around the world who needed to hear that they weren't alone. As they reached her car, a practical SUV, because despite her success, Amelia had never forgotten the value of keeping her feet on the ground. Sophia stirred in Bryce's arms. Mama, she mumbled sleepily. Are you famous? Amelia strapped her daughter into her car seat and considered the question. I'm not famous, sweetheart. I'm just someone who refused to disappear when other people wanted me to. Good, Sophia said with the fierce certainty that only toddlers possess. I don't want you to disappear either. As they drove through the quiet Denver streets toward home, Amelia thought about all the women who had approached her tonight, sharing stories of their own battles against erasure, theft, and betrayal. Each story was different, but the theme was always the same. They had been underestimated, and they had used that underestimation as fuel to build something extraordinary. Matthew and Isabel had tried to steal her life, but in the end, they had given her something far more valuable, a purpose that extended beyond herself. They had turned her personal tragedy into a movement, her private pain into public inspiration. The woman who had once made excuses for her husband's broken promises was gone. In her place stood someone who would never again accept less than she deserved, never again allow her contributions to be minimized, never again confuse kindness with weakness or silence with submission. As they pulled into the driveway of the house she'd bought with her own money, earned by her own work, protected by patents in her own name, Amelia smiled. She had built something beautiful from the ruins of their betrayal, something lasting, something that belonged entirely to her, and every day that something grew stronger. Would you have the courage to rebuild your life from nothing when the people you trusted most tried to destroy everything you built? Could you turn betrayal into triumph, silence into strength, and humiliation into inspiration? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a like to help me out and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next stories. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.